So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to prepare kind of our hearts and our minds to really be open to our sermon today. As you all know, we have a sermon series going on about our vision statement in the back of the room, and Pastor Mike today is going to be leading our sermon about how to find joy. I know personally for me, I've been having one of those whirlwind weeks, and this is just what I need, and I hope this is all something that you can connect to. As human beings, we all want joy in our life. We want to create joy. We want to share joy, and he's going to be sharing a little bit more about that. So ahead of him coming up on stage, we're going to have a short offering video, so please feel free to close your eyes and take a moment to meditate on that before Pastor Mike comes up to share our sermon today. Thank you.
Choosing celebration, breaking into freedom. You're the song of our hearts. We cast aside our shadows, trust you with our sorrows. You're the song of our hearts. Dancing to the rhythm of your heart. We're rising from the ashes to the stars. You're the joy, light in my soul. The joy, making me whole. Though I'm broken, I am running into your arms of love. Define us, joy will reignite us. You're the song of our hearts. Come on, my soul. The dark is just a canvas for your grace and brightness. You're the song of our hearts. We're dancing to the rhythm of your heart. Oh. We're rising from the ashes to the stars. You're the joy, light in my soul. The joy, making me whole. Though I'm broken, I am running into your arms of love. You're the joy, light in my soul. The joy, making me whole. Though I'm broken, I am running into your arms of love. You're the joy, the song of my heart, the hope of my soul. In the shadows, in the sorrows, in the desert, when the pain hits, you are constant, ever present. You're the song of my heart. Oh, in the shadows, in the sorrows, in the desert, when the pain hits, you are constant, ever present. You're the song of my heart. You're the joy, light in my soul. The joy, making me whole. Though I'm broken, I am running into your arms of love, into your arms.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the song. So, thank you all for coming today. It's great to see you all. And I am going to be talking about joy, as Clara mentioned. And it's interesting that she mentioned that this is a sermon that she's been looking forward to and needs, because I've oftentimes had the experience of preparing a message and finding out that the message was for me. It was a message that I needed for myself. So before I get too much into that, I just want to just preface the message real quick. So we're in the middle of our sermon series, a home for all, and this is all based on the first statement in our vision board, which is that we are a place where people from all walks of life can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, which we'll be talking about today, and fulfillment. And today we'll be talking about how do I find long-lasting joy. So when I said that this sermon was a good one for me, what I mean when I say that is I had also very kind of a tough week in terms of my feeling of unhappiness. I felt very unhappy this past week, and I was really having a hard time trying to figure out why. And as I was preparing for this sermon and I was watching different videos and I was researching different quotes and different things, I actually came to a realization of what I was doing wrong. And it was actually really enlightening. And I look forward to really sharing that with you all today. So when people think about joy or happiness, you think about many, many different kinds of things. Many different things come to mind. But most people, when you think about happiness, it's the happiness that we look for in the experience of something. I like the phrase, the happiness coming from happenings. The happiness that we experience because something happened in our life, or because someone said something nice to us, or because of this thing that we bought and we're anticipating it coming in the mail and it arrives and it's so exciting to be able to open it, or we're waiting to be able to buy something and it goes on sale and we go to the store and we buy it. Or maybe your birthday's coming up, so you're anticipating, what are the nice things people are going to say to me on Facebook? What are the presents that people are going to get for me? Or maybe it could be a long-time accomplishment, finishing school, getting married, maybe something that a promotion or a raise that you've worked really hard for. And the problem with happiness based on happenings is that happenings happen to us all the time. Different things happen to us in our life. Some things are they're uplifting, right? A kind word from a friend, a nice conversation with somebody. Maybe a prayer was answered. But when we rely on happenings for our happiness, then our happiness can be taken away when something that we feel is negative happens in our life. A kind word could turn into an angry word. Maybe somebody cuts you off while you're driving down the highway and gives you the finger, and you just feel like just ruined your whole week, right? Or maybe your kids aren't acting the way that you would like them to act. They're crying or complaining or whining or misbehaving, or maybe they're just being really energetic and you just aren't having a good day and you just don't appreciate it. You'd like for them to just be still and to be quiet for a while or something like that. The funny thing about, or maybe a coworker, says something to you that was, wasn't very helpful or wasn't very friendly. Maybe you have an argument with somebody in your life, and it can be really easy to, when we rely on happenings in our life, that our happiness can just get taken away because something bad happens, or something that even that we perceive as bad, maybe just a misunderstanding or something like that. Even an expectation, like, especially between like your husband or wife or someone who you're really close to, maybe a family member, a parent, a child, or something, like you have an expectation that they should be a certain way, and they don't fulfill that expectation, and what do? You can't change that person, but you have that expectation. All these different kind of things play a role in our life that can make it difficult for us to experience joy and happiness on a regular basis. But happiness is important, right? I mean, we should strive to be happy, shouldn't we? I mean, that's kind of an important question. I mean, especially for us, I really feel that we need to remember how important joy and happiness is in our life, because it can be really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day things in our life, the mundane things in our life, or also just on a level of faith, because we know that there are so many problems in the world. We know that God is waiting for us. God is suffering. God doesn't like seeing things the way that they are. Sometimes we can feel guilty for being happy. Sometimes I can feel guilty because I'm taking a vacation, or I'm taking a break, or because I'm, enjoying some me time or some downtime or something like that. But at the same time, what kind of community and what kind of experience are we trying to create? Do we want to focus on that? Do we want to focus on the feeling that, we shouldn't be joyful, we shouldn't be happy? Or do we want to be a happy and joyful community? Do we want people to see that, yes, even though we have an understanding of God where we know that God is working hard and God is suffering, and that there's a lot of sacrifice and pain in the world, that we can still stand upright in this world as people of faith and experience joy and happiness because we know that God exists, because we know that God is working in this world, because we know that God is involved in my life and in your life. But if we make our goal to be happy, then we're almost guaranteed to not be happy. If we strive in our life to seek happiness, I just want to be happy, then it almost guarantees that you won't be happy, because it all becomes about you. It all becomes about me. What do I want? And that's a recipe for unhappiness. So we don't necessarily want the kind of joy and happiness that comes from just, oh, Pastor Mike gave a good sermon. Or it might just be, hey, I woke up and I felt good today. Because you might wake up and you might feel terrible tomorrow. Have you ever had that experience? Happens to me all the time. So what are you going to do? Just live your life unhappy because you just happen to wake up unhappy? You could. A lot of people do that. But don't think that's what we're looking for. We want long-lasting happiness that can keep going even though we go through challenges in life, because challenges in life always happen. We always go through some kind of difficulty. Things will not turn out the way we want them to turn out all the time. We are lucky if they turn out the way we want them to turn out sometimes, or even every once in a while. But there are certain things that we don't have any control over. And we have to accept that things are going to happen in our life that don't make us feel good, don't make us feel uplifted, and they don't make us feel loved. So how do we find happiness in that? It's interesting that we live in a world of social media, right? I don't know how many of you have been keeping up with the news with social media, but there's kind of a mass exodus of people leaving social media. And I personally am not surprised, because I go on social media and I feel terrible afterwards many times. I love seeing people's family photos, and sometimes people put up inspiring quotes, and there's different things like that. But I more often than not feel really down and discouraged and kind of almost dirty after I leave social media, because I see the interaction people have with each other and the things that people say, and many times not things that people would say to one another's face in person, but because you're on the internet. Now, I think that for myself, I remember back when Zanga was a thing. You guys remember that? I don't know. Zanga was like one of the first social media, Zanga and MySpace. And I remember Zanga I really like Zanga. I really like social media in general, because at that time, when you wanted to keep in touch with somebody who would live far away, it wasn't so easy. We didn't have video conferencing, although I guess Skype was kind of a thing, still is kind of a thing. And I love to be able to watch kind of people read people's kind of journal entries. It was like an online journal. And you could kind of really get more or less a glimpse into people's lives. But eventually, and I think that's why a lot of people get on social media, because we want to be more connected. We want to feel closer to the people that we love and we care about and know what's going on in their lives. But I think that what's happening now is that actually social media is making people feel more disconnected, feeling more distant from the people that we care about, because we know it's not real. It's not authentic. A person can put up a picture of themselves smiling and laughing and, oh, I have a good life. But you don't actually know if that's actually the case. So maybe you do know that person and you're like, actually this person is really unhappy. But just what I see online, they look like they're having a really good life. And it can be really easy to look at somebody's life on social media and think, oh, I wish I had a life like that. I wish my life was like theirs. But even though you don't actually know what their life is actually like. And so it allows us to be more or less kind of fake. And I think what's going on is that people are realizing that, and we're craving real relationships. We're craving real conversations, having deep, meaningful conversation with my friend, seeing them in person, having that, skin-to-skin, face-to-face experience. That is part of the human experience that we all crave. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of tired of the just vicariously, or just viewing people's life from a screen. When we look at, and so when you watch like TED Talks about happiness, when the people at Harvard has published happiness studies, there's even this thing called, I don't know if this is the exact name, but like the World Happiness Index. It's like you can look at any country, and every country has like a rating of how happy they. I don't know how accurate that is and how they judge those kind of things, but they have some criteria for defining how happy a person is in that culture, in that country. And they rate each country based on how happy people are. It's really kind of interesting. There's so much research has been done on this idea of happiness or joy, because it's something that everyone is really looking for in their life. But it always comes down to the same things. It comes down to the quality of our relationships. It comes down to our experiences of growth in our life. And it comes down to our attitude. Many times, and you've probably heard this before, the attitude of gratitude. Having this attitude that no matter what comes my way, I'm just going to be grateful for it. Doesn't matter what it is. I like Rick Warren's explanation of happiness. He says, happiness is not something we feel. It is something we create. We create it by right thinking and right actions. If we create a habit of right thinking and right actions, we create a habit of lifelong happiness. So I'm going to go into that a little bit, and I'm going to read a little bit from Philippians. This is from the beginning of Philippians. To all God's holy people in Christ Jesus at Philippi, together with the overseers and deacons, grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Then he goes on to say later, and this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. So I want to give a little bit of a background, because you might be wondering why in the world I use these verses. So the Philippians is written by Paul. And Paul, he wrote much of the New Testament. And in the beginning here, so he's writing this letter to the people, the Christians in Philippi, to God's holy people at Philippi, which is a church that he started. He started this church in Philippi. And he's in prison when he's writing this letter. actually, the last 4 years of his life, 2 years he was in prison under false charges. He got out of prison. Then he was traveling to Rome because he had this grandiose vision that when he got to Rome, he was gonna use the Colosseum to teach all the Romans about Jesus. And he had this whole plan, and it seemed like a pretty good plan. But he got shipwrecked and stranded on an island with a bunch of people, and he got bit by a poisonous snake. And then they put him in prison again. But this time when they put him in prison, he was such a high-level prisoner that they actually had him chained to a prison guard 24 hours a day. And so he's in prison, and he's there 24 hours a day, handcuffed or chained or whatever they had at that time to this guard. No privacy, no ability to do all the things that he wanted to do with his vision for ministry to witness to all the Romans. And he went to Rome because Rome was the center of the world at that time. If you wanted to really affect change in the world, you went to Rome. And so he went to Rome thinking that he had all this plan and stuff like that. So things didn't really work out the way that he wanted them to. And on top of that, it was kind of a miserable situation. He had all the reason to be really frustrated. God, why don't you, I have this plan, I want to do this thing for you, why am I sitting in here in prison, handcuffed to this prison guard 24 hours a day? Where are you? I want to do this great thing for you, but I can't. And just thinking about his personal circumstances, how uncomfortable he must have been, how much he maybe would have liked to just go to the bathroom in privacy, in peace by himself. But it's interesting that what ended up happening was that through being in prison, he actually was able to witness to all the other guards and all the other prisoners, thousands of people from prison, because everybody knew why he was in prison. Everyone knew he was in prison because he was preaching about Jesus. And because they saw the way he held himself. They saw the way he acted while he was in prison. They saw his attitude. And you can see his attitude here, where he says, I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. So that's not the kind of thing that you would say if you're a bitter, frustrated person. If I was there in prison, I might write a letter like, have you guys heard what happened to me? I'm in prison. I've been in prison for 2 years, and I'm handcuffed to this prisoner, this prison guard, and they just treat me so bad, and I'm so frustrated because I want to be able to do this, and I can't, and woe is me, like that kind of a way of thinking. But no, his attitude is, and you also have to remember too that he started the church in Philippi, but it was very hard. It was not an easy church to start. And in some ways kind of had some potentially, some misunderstandings, some grudges, a lot of things were not going his way. But yet he still says, and another way of saying this in different translation would be, every time I think of you, I feel gratitude. Now, let's take a moment to think about that. You think about all the people in your life. Just take a moment, think about all the people in your life. Family members, kids, friends, other members of the community here, coworkers. When you think about those people, what feeling wells up from within you? Right? Probably not gratitude. I mean, maybe for some people, but for everybody, do we feel grateful for everybody in our lives? Do we feel grateful that God put this person in my life for whatever reason? Whether it's to provide friendship, or to help me to grow, to be a better person, or to give me some tough love, or whatever, I don't know. More often than not, we think about the people in our lives, and we think about what we don't like about that person, especially if it's a person that you've known for a long time. there's a tendency that we have. I don't know if this is a part of our. I don't think this is a part of our original God-given nature, but we tend, when the more longer we know somebody, the more we tend to take that person for granted. The more we tend to have expectation of that person, that they should be a certain way, even if they're not. And then we blame them for not being that way, that we think they should be, instead of celebrating how far that person's come. It's kind of like my kids will, they'll bring their artwork home from school, right? And they're like, hey, Dad, look, I made this painting. And it's like scribbles, right? And it's like, it might look like what it's supposed to be, but it might not. And I'll look at them and be like, hey, it's great. Why? Because it's great for where they're at. But I'm not going to be like, oh, that looks terrible because, it should look like this, right? But yet we do that to people all the time. We do that to people because we think that they should be somewhere where they're not. And then we get frustrated with them, but not accepting for where they're at that time in their life and being grateful for them. So even though Paul had reason to not be grateful for the people at the church of Philippi, for example, he writes to them and he says, I thank God every time I remember you. Every time I think of you, I feel gratitude. And herein lies one of the first keys to happiness. To be able to look at every person in our life and to feel gratitude. To be grateful that that person is in my life, that God brought that person into my life, whether it's somebody that I love or somebody that I don't get along with. The attitude of gratitude for people. Let's go on a little further here. Let's see. I think I missed something. Oh, yeah. Thank my God every time I remember you. Now, for me personally, this was a big... is there anybody here who's never heard this before? Okay, didn't think so. We all know, we've all heard that gratitude is important, right? If we want to be happy, then we need to find a way to express gratitude in all situations. But we don't live that way. I feel pretty confident that we don't live that way, at least not all the time. Instead of expressing and feeling gratitude, many times we complain. If not in words, in our mind, in our heart, we complain that things aren't the way that I would like them to be. This person isn't the way that I would like them to be. And complaining is all about how I feel, how I think that that person should be. And because it's about how I feel, I'll never be happy. Paul goes on to talk a lot. Philippians is not a very long book in the Bible. It's just like 4 chapters. But it's a really telling book because Paul goes on to continue talking, and he says, what I have confidence that what God started here in Philippi, because he started it, he's going to finish it. And I have confidence that things are going to work out. And he talks about how, I know that there's people who are saying bad things about me, but I know it's all going to work out in the end. He's got so much confidence and trust that if God started something, he's going to finish something. And he even talks about how, don't worry about me. Everything is worked out for the best. So remember how I was saying how Paul had a plan. He was going to go to the Colosseum and he was going to witness all the people and change the world, basically. And it didn't work out. But instead of feeling upset, he just decided to carry on trying to do his best in the situation that he had, trusting that God was going to make something work in that situation. And he did. It all worked out. So Paul was able not just to witness to the prisoners and the guards, but also he actually, by the time he wrote this letter, even some of Caesar's own family had become Christians at that point. Many, many, many thousands of people he was able to witness to, not because he was out there speaking at the stadium, but because he was in prison living a life that reflected what he was teaching. People could see that even though he had all the reason to be miserable, he was happy and he lived with purpose and he was okay with the situation that had been handed to him. Not only that, he used his time in prison when he couldn't do a lot of other things, and he ended up writing most of the New Testament, which I think anyone could say had a fairly big impact on the world going forward. He may never have ever ended up doing that if he hadn't been put in prison, ironically. So Paul practiced something that is really near and dear to our faith, right? It is the practice of seeing from God's viewpoint, right? For those of you who know the divine principle in depth, we have the four fallen natures, right? The first fallen nature that we inherited from the fall was not seeing God from God's point of view. And what Paul was able to do in this situation, and the lesson that there is to learn from this situation, from this story, is that in all situations, there is God's point of view. There's God's point of view. How does God see this person? How does God see my circumstances? How does God see my children? How does God see my friend? How does God see my coworker? Maybe there's a bigger plan for this circumstance. Maybe it's not what I wanted to see happen in my life. Maybe this isn't the plan that I had for my life. But maybe God has a bigger plan. Maybe God can use this circumstance to do something bigger in my life than I could have done by my own ability. And I really believe that that's true, especially when we have the heart to pray, to ask God for guidance in our lives. So the next part is, this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ. So what he's saying here is that I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you even though I'm in prison and maybe should be asking for prayers myself. But the attitude that he's praying with is what is significant here. A lot of times we end up in a situation we feel like there's nothing can be done. So I kind of recognized where my unhappiness was coming from. There was two things. There was expectation that wasn't being met, and relationships that were not healthy, that were not going well. So, just like any relationship, we have relationships, with all of you, and sometimes just like everybody, we have to figure out how to make those relationships God-centered and healthy. Because one thing is for sure, bad relationships kill joy. They kill happiness. When you're in a bad relationship with a friend, your parent, your child, especially if you love that person dearly, if the relationship is sour, you can't be happy. Not really, not sincerely. I mean, we can take some Instagram photos and look happy, but deep down, these broken relationships or unhealthy relationships will keep us from experiencing real joy in our life, fundamentally. And what Paul is talking about here is he's giving some real advice how we can fix relationships. Because we can't change people, right? You might wish for somebody to be a certain way or more of a certain way or to be less of a certain way, but we can't make them be that way. And in fact, if we try, they probably will become more of the way we don't want them to be. It's like nagging, right? Nagging never changes people. So what Paul is sharing with us is actually really deep insight in how we can help people to be better, in a sense, or in a sense, what we can do. What we can do. And I started practicing this. And I can attest that it really works. In that when you're in a situation where you feel like you're kind of resigned about a person or something, and you don't feel like there's anything more you can do, you've done enough, then you can try to pray for a person. And I started thinking about the people in my life that I wish I had a better relationship with. Or maybe something happened and it's hard to look that person in the face. It's hard to feel joyful. It's hard to feel gratitude when I see that person, when I think of that person, right? You know who that person is if you think about them in your head, and anything except for gratitude comes into your head. That feeling. Maybe it might be fear, anxiety. I mean, I'm just being realistic. I think we all have people in our lives that are like that. And I know that that's nobody's desire. Nobody wants to have that. But the reality is that without addressing those things and dealing with them, then we can't find joy and happiness in our life. So what Paul is saying is that we can pray for people, but not pray like, dear God, please change this person. He's so terrible. Terrible person. You know, if you can't pray like that. But if we pray, here, let me go back here. Where am I? Pray with joy. Pray with love. And we pray that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. I had these summarized somewhere. I don't think I have it. Okay. That you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless. So to pray for people that they can make good decisions in their life, that they can grow to become a deeper and stronger person that experiences and can give love more fully, that we can be a person that lives with integrity, and that we're filled with the fruit of righteousness, so that you can become a person that embodies God's love and God's character in your life, and that you produce the fruits of that love and that character in your actions, in the words that you speak. So I started to pray like this for people. And it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't make them change, but it changes your perspective. It really does. It changes your perspective on that person. It really makes it easier to deal with that relationship. It makes it easier to deal with that person. And it helps you to recognize that you don't need to change people in order to be happy. But we can pray for people. But we're not responsible to change them. It's not my responsibility to change you. It's not yours. Well, anyway, it's not your responsibility to change me, but anyway, I don't want to go there. But it's not our responsibility to change one another, to make one another more than we are. Our responsibility is to love and embrace one another, to be honest with one another, and to live by example. To embody the things that we would want to pray that somebody else has and that somebody else is. In the end, the most powerful thing that Paul had was to live by example, to live the way that he believed that Jesus would have wanted him to live in that situation. And he did. And I mean, in some ways, he lived it was kind of miserable for him. But at the same time, he could live with joy because he knew that he was walking in the same footsteps that Jesus had walked in before. That Jesus was falsely accused. Jesus was hurt and treated unfairly. And there was a part of him, I'm sure, that could feel the joy that he felt close to God, that he felt close to Jesus in that way. So sacrifice and to some degree, suffering isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it can help us to get in touch with that deeper aspect of ourselves, that trueness of ourselves that we don't always feel. And sometimes it can help us to really get in touch with God. It can really help us to get in touch with who God is. And there are times in our lives where we probably need that. And we shouldn't grumble and get frustrated when times come in our lives that feel really uncomfortable or they feel difficult. Because maybe God is trying to give us something that we need. Maybe God is trying to prepare us for the next stage in our life by going through that challenge or that difficulty or whatever it is. And then lastly, we need to practice. And by the way, these are all habits. These are all habits that we need to develop. You know, it takes time to develop habits. Bad habits develop over time, good habits develop over time. But if we have a habit of being frustrated or judgmental or upset about situations or complain about situations that happen in our life, then we never find happiness there. But if we create the habit, if we actively make the effort to develop the habit of seeing from God's point of view, praying for others, not basing my happiness on the way somebody else treats me or the thing that somebody else is doing, then we can create the habit of experiencing joy in our life, because it's not based on happenings, it's based on what we create. I want to share a quote from the Divine Principle. This is from the very beginning, the introduction. People feel joy when their desires are fulfilled. The word desire, however, is often not understood in its original sense, because in the present circumstances, our desires tend to pursue evil rather than good. Desires which result in injustice do not emanate from a person's original mind. The original mind is well aware that such desires lead to misfortune. Therefore, it repels evil desires and strives to follow the good. Even at the cost of their lives, people seek for the joy that can enrapture the original mind. This is the human condition. We grope along exhausting paths to cast off the shadow of death and search for the light of life. So what the principle is, I believe, trying to speak to us in that message is that we don't want to just follow our emotions. We don't want to just try to live by what we think is going to make us happy. Because a lot of times our emotions and what we think is going to make us happy is just based on what I want. It's not necessarily going to benefit anybody else. It's not necessarily even going to benefit myself. But in the moment, we might feel like, oh, this is what I need to be happy. If I had a better job, if I had better kids, if I had a better wife, if I had a better husband, then things would be better. But they don't. It doesn't work that way. And what the principle is telling us is that we need to get in touch with our true desires. What are our true desires? What, in the end of our life, do we want? That if all other things didn't matter and we got those things, that we would be happy. And that's what it comes down to when we look at the studies that people have done, when we watch the TED Talks, when you read the articles. It comes down to healthy, honest, real relationships. It comes down to gratitude in all situations. And it comes down to, also, I didn't talk about this so much, but where we are in terms of our relationship with God. Our relationship with God is a relationship too, right? It's just not I can't just walk over to God and have a conversation with him. But our relationship with God is also a relationship. And where we are in that relationship is also going to define how happy we are too. Because maybe there's some things I don't feel like talking to God about. Maybe there's some things I'm resentful to God about. Maybe there's some areas in my life that I feel ashamed of in front of God. And we can't be really happy about that either. So I thought that that was really, we need to get in touch with our original desires. What is the most important to us? And Paul made a big difference in the world through living in prison and being grateful. And I think that most of us have not been in prison or will not be going to prison in the future, but we can take the same life lesson. Whatever our circumstances, no matter how good your situation might be, there's always something that we can find that we don't like, that we could complain about, that we could feel it would be better if it was like this. If then thinking. If it was like this, then it would be better. If it was like that, then it would be better. The grass is always greener on the other side, right? But we need to create the habits of practicing gratitude in all situations, especially when it comes to people. Because relationships are one of the breaking points between what it means to be happy and joyful and what it means to be unhappy and unjoyful. And we need to pray for people. If nothing else, pray for people. And maybe God will find a way to change that person without expectation. But maybe. I've experienced that God has made major changes in my life. I really believe that I'm the person today because of God's guidance in my life. And I think that God can do that for all people. So if you have the opportunity to read all of Philippians, please do. It's a really good book. It's only like I said, it's 4 chapters. It's 4 pages. It's very short, but it's really an awesome book, especially if you want to really get the sense of what it means to be grateful in our life when things aren't going the way that we would like them to go. So with that being said, please join me in prayer. Good morning, most beloved Heavenly Parent. Thank you for every person that came here today. Heavenly Parent, I pray that each and every one of us can pray the prayer that we can experience gratitude, deep, sincere gratitude for every person in our life. No matter how difficult people can be sometimes, no matter how irrational, I pray, Heavenly Parent, that we can see from your viewpoint in all situations. As a community, Heavenly Parent, we, as one voice, we want to receive your guidance. We want to receive your love. We want to go in the direction that you are wanting to see our community go, to see our families to go, to see each and every one of us in our lives. And we know that a part of that means that for us to be happy, for us to be joyful. But we also know that happiness and that joy doesn't just come from winning the award, meeting that nice person. It also comes through us going over the hills and the valleys that come in our lives at times. I pray, Heavenly Parent, that we can practice gratitude in all things. Every situation that comes along, and I pray that we can invite your guidance and your direction in each and every one of our lives. That each and every one of us can pray the prayer that we want you in our life. That we want your guidance, we want your hand in our lives. Even though we know that might be uncomfortable sometimes, you might throw some things our way that we weren't looking for, that we don't want. But because we know that you have hopes and dreams and inspiration for us, every single person here, Heavenly Parent, we're here for a reason. And you love all your children deeply. Whatever challenge or difficulty we're dealing with in our life, Heavenly Parent, I pray that we can take that bold step forward to deal with it, to do what we can do, but then also to offer it to you. That we want to pray for people in our lives. We don't want to just give up on people. We don't want to just expect that they're just going to be the way they are and there's nothing we can do about it. We want to model Jesus' character. We want to model your love in our lives. And that means that we want to treat all people the same. We want to treat all people with love. And we want to have the belief that all the people in our life can be great people, that they can reach their potential, and that we can be a part of that journey with them. I pray, Heavenly Parent, that you can help us, guide us, that we can create this community with joy, with happiness, because there are people who are looking for joy and happiness, and they're not finding it. And we're not perfect. We try to find joy and happiness in the wrong places many times, all of us. Yet, I pray that we can just, as a community, we can strive for it. We can make the effort to make the habits. We can pray the prayers, and that step by step we can go and we can take people along with us. All the people who come in those doors, all the people who want to be a part of our community, that we can go together towards growing in joy and happiness in our lives, rightness in front of you, and healthy and happy and prosperous relationships. Thank you, Heavenly Parent, for the opportunity to be able to be here today, to be able to hear this message. I know I gained a lot from it, and I offer this prayer in the name of Michael and Adoni Hendrick, blessed Central family. Amen and Aju. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. I have to argue with you. I definitely think that one was for me, and I'm sure you all probably felt personally touched by that sermon. I think that I was really reflecting on, how we're each and every one of us are not in prison, but there could be parts of our life that we wish we were somewhere else, or we wish we were with certain people, or maybe we don't like our job. And I really got a revelation internally that wherever we are, it is an ask from God to develop our hearts so that when we are where we want to be, whether that's a Colosseum in Rome or with the people that we want to be with, our heart is already prepared, right, with gratitude. So thank you again, Pastor Mike, for preparing so intentionally and sharing such a refreshing, sermon with us today. So now we're going to transition to our offering and also to our reflection time. So we're going to be playing some background music. If you'd like to offer your tithe, we have our two lovely ladies in the back going to be walking down the center of the aisle with a basket, and then we're going to close it out with our last song after that. So please take a couple minutes. Feel free to reflect and also offer your tithe if you'd like to give. Thank you. All right, so we're going to transition now to a couple of announcements. As you know, we always have something going on in our community, and we want to share that with you so that you can join and engage. So our first announcement today is going to be one of appreciation and thanks. Our very special Dr. Hendrick recently flew out to Gloucester, Massachusetts this past week to teach a group of high schoolers about how to put God-centered principles into action in their daily lives. And we heard it was a really valuable and impactful workshop, and they were so thrilled to have him. And here's a couple pictures of them. So let's give him a round of applause of appreciation. What's better than answering God's call on the fly, right? Not much. And you can see how they're smiling and clearly had a very impactful time. And please feel free to ask him about how it was. I heard it was really humid, but he survived anyway, right? We don't melt. But really rave reviews coming from the educational service there. Additionally, our very own Andrew Love traveled recently to give presentations at summer camps happening across our nation. And this is an example of a picture of him speaking to a packed room in England. And he really shared about the importance of dealing with pornography and living up to sexual integrity in our own lives. So we want to give a big special thank you to Andrew Love. And this one, who recognizes these kids here? Anybody see their face on the screen? Raise your hand if you see your face on the screen there. You see your face? You see their face? Yeah, so this was last Sunday. We had a wonderful group of people who took our youth to go to Water World, which is our local water park here. And we want to give a sincere thanks to all the parents who took care of them and supported this event to be a success. And it was a huge blast. So let's give one more round of applause to all the parents, Dave Stein, and everyone else who made this happen. I'm kind of sad that I wasn't able to go. They looked like they had a lot of fun, right? So if you are not in the picture next year, you're more than welcome to come out and support this event. All right. Additionally, we have some free silverware and beautiful plates. We're cleaning out our kitchen downstairs, and we have a full table of giveaway items in the back of our dining room downstairs. So as you go downstairs after our program today, please help yourself, or if you don't need anything, think about people who do need items like this in need. Please feel free to take whatever ones you'd like to kind of brighten up your kitchen or anyone else who might need it. And the rest are going to be donated afterwards. So please make sure to grab it if you need it, and if not, we're going to donate it. Additionally, today we're going to have our Who Are We presentation. This is going to be today for all new or our guests or longtime members. This program run by Pastor Mike is going to be in the French ministry room, which is right over there through our cafe. Please feel free to grab your plate of lunch and join us. We're going to be sharing a little bit more around the vision of who we are, where we're going, and the future of this community. As you know, we have our vision board in the back, so if you'd like to learn about how this all comes together, please come out and listen to Pastor Mike really speak about who we are and where we're going next and how you can be a part of that. Our next event is that we have a Bible study every Thursday at 7 p.m. And really the focus is how we can dig in together. So every week we have a new rotating topic about the Bible and how to gain a deeper understanding. And this is also run by Dr. Hendricks. So please come out, join, nerd out about the Bible a little bit more, and let's connect a little bit more as a community through this event. All right, two more slides. Hang in with me. I know we have a lot of wonderful events going on, one of them being that we have our upcoming Divine Principle workshops. As you all know, the Divine Principle is the core book of our faith, and for any of those who'd like to learn more about it, we have fantastic educational events that are 4-day and 7-day experiences in our, best-in-class educational facility in Las Vegas. So if you're interested in going or would like some financial support, please talk to Pastor Mike to make those happen. And if you can't go, please keep these in mind for those who can go so you can share the word about these upcoming events. And then lastly, I want to close out on a really positive note. We have a brand new family in our community called the Vanderstock family, and we want to especially recognize them because they just moved here from Europe, and they're already plugging in. They're already set to be making lunch for everybody today. So let's give them a special thank you. We are so grateful for you guys to be here, and we can't wait to get to know you a little bit better. And then additionally, we want to say thank you to Roger Furher and the Alves family for cooking and cleaning today. I think I mixed it up. The Vanderstock family is cooking next week, and currently we have the Alves and Roger Furher. So let's give them a final round of applause too. Thank you to everybody.